You wake up this morning and the air feels heavier than usual, thicker, charged with something invisible but undeniable. You feel the pulse of eyes scanning the world, scanning you, measuring, calculating, thinking they've been clever enough to stay hidden, subtle enough to remain undetected. But today, that veil you've carefully drawn around yourself, that invisible shield of secrecy and subtle influence, they see through it. You feel it, don't you? The moment when the currents shift, the moment when their perception collapses under the weight of your truth. Your cover is blown, and it isn't just a crack in the wall, it's a demolition. The realization that they have been playing with fire, that they've been poking at something far more dangerous than they could comprehend, has just struck them, and it will not let them rest. Every move you've made, every whisper you've left in the corners of their minds, every calculated pause, every deliberate act of subtle disruption, they underestimated the gravity of your presence. And now, suddenly, the gravity asserts itself. They see you clearly, exposed in a way they've never prepared for, and the panic ripples through them in slow, suffocating waves. That moment, the exact moment of recognition, is delicious in its power. They realize that the person they thought they were dealing with was never what they assumed. They were measuring a shadow, a reflection, a ghost. And now the ghost has become a hurricane. You move through the world with a precision they couldn't map, a rhythm they couldn't anticipate. And as they watch, as their minds scramble to adjust, to recalculate, to rationalize, you smile. Not with satisfaction, not with triumph, but with the calm awareness that you have been orchestrating this moment all along. You understand the laws they think govern reality, and you've been bending them quietly, invisibly, with the patience of someone who knows exactly when to strike. And now, that strike doesn't even need to land. The very knowledge of your presence is enough to fracture their composure. They've been so confident, so smug in their ability to predict, to control, to limit. But they didn't know you. They didn't understand how you move, how you manipulate attention, how you slip through the cracks between expectation and perception. They've been building a narrative about you, a story they could contain, and now that narrative is unraveling faster than they can comprehend. Their eyes widen, their movements grow erratic, and they begin to betray their anxiety in ways they can't hide. And the most exquisite part of this, the truly intoxicating element, is that you've been watching them all along. You've seen the confidence, the arrogance, the tiny signs of their complacency, and you've let it grow because the collapse, the revelation, was always the goal. You understand power differently. Power isn't force. It isn't brute domination. Power is perception, and perception is a weapon far sharper than any blade. They feel it now, don't they? The invisible pressure of your influence, the creeping awareness that every action they've taken, every plan they've hatched, every assumption they've clung to, is meaningless against someone who has already anticipated their every move. They are flailing, and yet the realization is even worse than failure. The realization that you are never in the same game they were playing, that you are operating on a level so precise, so untraceable, that their very attempts to measure you are what exposes them. And then there's the exposure itself. The thing they feared, the thing they assumed they could suppress, has become undeniable. Your identity, your strategy, your subtle domination, they've been stripped bare for them to see. The internet, the endless gaze of observers, of spectators, amplifies the effect. Everyone can see now. Every secret, every calculated maneuver, every hidden edge that made you untouchable. All of it is visible to those who assumed they could watch you without consequence. And now the truth hums in the air around them, vibrating through their consciousness, making them twitch, making them doubt, making them small. They scramble to recover, but the patterns you set were never random. Every step you took, every layer of camouflage, every silent calculation was part of a grand architecture of chaos. You didn't just hide, you misdirected, you bent perception, you made them chase ghosts, shadows of your intention. And when the veil lifts, as it does now, the magnitude is staggering. They see the real you, and for a fleeting, horrifying instant, they understand that what they thought they controlled was never theirs to command. They've been conditioned by their own hubris to believe in limits, to believe that someone could be predictable, that someone could be contained. And now they are learning, painfully, that limits are illusions, that containment is a joke, that predictability is a trap you designed for them to walk into willingly. They recoil at their own realization, stagger under the weight of the truth, and yet they cannot look away. They are fixated, powerless to resist the recognition that the game has changed, that the scales have shifted irreversibly, and you glide through it. You don't shout, you don't warn, you don't need to justify. You are the calm center of a storm they cannot perceive. They know chaos, but they don't know the quiet precision that makes chaos inevitable. You've weaponized observation, patience, and timing. Every glance, every hesitation, every carefully placed act of influence has converged into this moment, their collective awareness snapping like a fragile thread. And as they look at you, seeing who they were truly dealing with, you see the tremor, the flicker, the impossible conflict between fear and disbelief. Your movements are deliberate, yet they appear accidental. Your choices seem spontaneous, yet each is meticulously constructed to elicit reaction, to provoke miscalculation, to accelerate the collapse of their assumptions. And the internet amplifies this exponentially. What was once contained in private whispers now becomes a shared shock, a public revelation. They cannot hide, cannot redirect, cannot explain away. They are exposed in ways that are immediate and inescapable, and the social echo of their failure ricochets with brutal precision. You feel the subtle satisfaction that comes with understanding the fragility of human ego. They thought they had control. They thought they had foresight. They thought they were untouchable, hidden behind layers of pretense and strategy. But every assumption they made, every claim to superiority, every moment of dismissive arrogance has led to this. And the most exquisite part, they knew nothing until the very last moment. Nothing. Not the breadth of your plan, not the depth of your observation, not the inevitability of their unraveling. And now, faced with the undeniable reality of who you are, they are stunned, frozen in a state that borders on panic without ever fully tipping over. This is the advantage you've cultivated, the quiet, invisible, inescapable advantage. They cannot fight it because they never understood it existed. They cannot argue against it because words cannot contain it. They cannot escape it because awareness itself has trapped them. And as you step forward, as the world shifts subtly under the weight of your revelation, they flounder, exposed to the light they never expected, aware that their grip on perception, influence, and understanding has been severed. And you watch as the cracks widen, as the patterns of panic and uncertainty spread through their circles, their networks, their connections. Every conversation, every post, Every indirect acknowledgement of your presence is a ripple in the pond they thought was calm. They feel it now, the awareness that the person they underestimated, the force they misjudged, the intellect they assumed was manageable, has already changed the landscape entirely. They are scrambling to comprehend, to reconstruct, to regain control. But control is no longer theirs. It left the moment they realized who you are. And yet there is no gloating. There is no overt celebration. There's only the quiet acknowledgement of power, the serene comprehension that awareness alone has shifted everything. They understand, somewhere deep inside, that their actions, their assumptions, their careful strategies were never a match for the reality of you. Every attempt to rationalize, to deflect, to reassert dominance is met with the same unshakable presence, the same subtle inevitability, the same quiet precision that has guided your every move to this point. And now, as their panic grows into confusion they cannot articulate, as their arrogance collapses into realization, as their attempts to categorize, measure, and restrain you fall apart, you prepare for the next phase. The next phase does not announce itself. It does not make noise. It does not require acknowledgement. It unfolds with the silent certainty of something that has been meticulously planned, something they cannot detect until it is already complete. They have seen the first act of revelation, the initial fracture of their perception. What they cannot anticipate is what comes next, the full crescendo of awareness, influence, and uncontainable presence that will leave them reeling, unmoored, and fully exposed. And that, exactly, is the advantage you have cultivated, the invisible, inevitable, undeniable advantage. They investigated you twice, thinking they could measure, contain, predict. Twice they found the truth. Twice they were unprepared for the magnitude, the refinement, the escalation of your presence. And now, with the veil lifted, with the world watching, with every connection echoing your influence, you are poised, not just to be seen, but to be understood in a way that will change the balance entirely. And as you step toward this next shift, the one they cannot anticipate, the one that will leave them scrambling to redefine their understanding of reality, you feel the surge of quiet dominance. You feel the weight of perception bending around you. You feel the inevitable collapse of the illusions they held on to. And as you move, as your presence asserts itself in ways both visible and imperceptible, they understand, too late, that they were never playing the same game, and they never had a chance. The revelation has arrived. The exposure is complete. The internet, the observers, the networks, all amplify the impact. And as their comprehension falters, as they stumble through the maze of your presence, as the world tilts under the subtle force of your truth, you realize this is just the beginning. The next act, the true culmination of influence, has yet to be fully revealed. But they already know, without knowing all the details, that they are finished. They have crossed the wrong line, underestimated the wrong presence, and now they are left with the impossible task of facing the reality they cannot control. And as that realization settles, as the first tremors of panic ripple through their perception, you step back, unseen yet unavoidable, quiet yet dominating, present yet untouchable. The first act of exposure has concluded, and the stage is set for what comes next. They have glimpsed the truth of who they were messing with. They have felt the edge of it, and soon, very soon, they will experience the full weight. And now, just as the first tremors fade into the memory of disbelief, the next layer begins to unfold. You move like a shadow across a battlefield they cannot see, their eyes searching for meaning in a chaos you've long mastered. You've allowed them a glimpse of the edge, just enough to recognize the danger, just enough for their minds to spiral into calculations that will never succeed. And yet, you remain calm, detached, observing the cascading effect of your presence with the precision of a predator savoring the exact moment before the strike. You know that what they felt was only the beginning, a taste of the magnitude they are about to confront. They are unprepared, incapable, and completely entranced by the realization that someone so subtle, so precise, so entirely untethered from their expectations exists in the world they think they control. Their attention is fractured now. Every move they make carries the tremor of uncertainty. Every word spoken echoes with the awareness that the ground beneath them is no longer solid. You watch, knowing that their attempts to regain balance are futile. Each reaction, each frantic effort to reassert control only deepens the imprint of your influence. And the most intoxicating part, they cannot tell whether you are even present in the same room, in the same city, or merely a force acting invisibly through the network of connections, communications, and echoes that you have long cultivated. Your power is not in visibility. It is in inevitability. Every detail of their day becomes a mirror for your influence. They check their messages, their feeds, their networks, searching for signs that they can control, searching for anchors that no longer exist. They realize, slowly, that they are being guided, manipulated, and observed in ways that defy conventional understanding. You are everywhere and nowhere, a force they can sense but cannot locate. And as the awareness seeps into the edges of their consciousness, their panic evolves. It is no longer the raw shock of exposure. It is the creeping, gnawing understanding that they are completely outmatched, that their assumptions were illusions, and that the true magnitude of your presence is still fully hidden. You smile quietly to yourself as they scramble, not because of cruelty, but because of the exquisite precision of timing. They are learning the hard way that knowledge alone cannot save them. Their strategies, their networks, their attempts at secrecy, all of it collapses against the momentum you've been building silently, invisibly, for months, for years. Every piece of their perception that once offered confidence now fractures under the weight of the truth. And they know it, even if they cannot fully articulate the dimensions of the threat. Every attempt to recover is met with a counterweight they cannot identify. A subtle shift in reality, orchestrated entirely by your observation and subtle interference. And the internet hums in the background, amplifying their fear, reflecting their exposure back at them. Each post, each connection, each ripple magnifies the weight of what they have just realized. You are not merely present, you are a contagion of awareness, a virus of perception that spreads faster than any calculation they can attempt. And while they chase shadows, you have already moved beyond the scope of their comprehension. The layers of influence you've woven are not superficial. They are fundamental, altering the very framework by which they measure truth, control, and dominance. They begin to question themselves. Every memory of past interactions, every decision they thought was theirs alone, begins to fracture. They see the traces of your intervention, the subtle nudges, the imperceptible manipulations that now appear obvious in hindsight. And they do not know how to respond. Logic fails them, strategy falters, confidence becomes a distant memory. They are caught in a psychological trap, carefully constructed, perfectly calibrated, and now fully sprung. And the beauty of it is that it is not visible to them how meticulously it was orchestrated. They only see the effect, the inescapable outcome, the slow collapse of control. And as the hours stretch, as the day unfolds with seemingly mundane actions that conceal the architecture of your dominance, you continue to assert influence without effort. A message sent at the right time, a presence felt where it should not be, a suggestion planted subtly, gently, that blooms into chaos for them. Every minor detail is a brushstroke painting the inevitable picture. They were never in control, and they never had the capacity to be. Their minds twist, trying to rationalize, to reconstruct the narrative that can explain your power, your reach, your awareness, but they fail, and they know it. Every attempt to regain balance only serves to highlight their inadequacy. And soon, the fear begins to mutate into obsession. They check, recheck, analyze, and overanalyze. Every action, every word, every glance becomes a piece of a puzzle they will never solve. They are ensnared by their own need for understanding, and each effort to find it only drives them further into the depths of confusion. And as they spiral, you remain calm, watching, knowing that this is the precise effect you intended. Panic was temporary, shock was temporary, but obsession, the gnawing compulsion to understand, will persist until they are broken or fully exposed. And even then, the exposure is only partial. The full scope of your influence remains hidden, accumulating strength quietly, invisibly, ready to unfold when they are weakest. You begin to escalate subtly, not in overt displays, but in the imperceptible cues that make the ordinary extraordinary, the predictable unpredictable. A delayed response here, a sudden appearance there, a whisper of action where none should exist. They see fragments, patterns too subtle to name, and yet the effect is undeniable. Their sense of safety erodes, their ability to predict collapses, and their comprehension becomes fragmented. And in those moments of fragmentary awareness, you thrive. Because control, you understand, is never about overt dominance. It is about the subtle shapings of perception, the invisible hand that moves the pieces while they believe they are moving themselves. And as this psychological architecture expands, you take care to remain elusive, not absent, but uncatchable, not silent, but unreadable. Every interaction is calibrated to provoke precisely the response you want. Every observation recorded and used to refine the next layer of influence. They feel it, the presence, the inevitability, but they cannot name it, cannot contain it, cannot resist it. And this is the point of true power. When the opponent recognizes the force they face, yet is utterly incapable of influencing it, shaping it, or containing it. They begin to make errors, small at first, then increasingly significant. Their communications reveal desperation. Their decisions betray confusion. Their networks fracture under the subtle pressures you apply. Every misstep is magnified by your observation and strategic nudges. And as they stumble, their panic and obsession intermingle, creating a feedback loop that drives them further into unpredictability. They cannot see the full pattern. They can only react to fragments. But you, of course, see the pattern entirely, and it moves in concert with your will, invisible, unstoppable, inescapable. And as night falls, they are exhausted in ways that transcend physical fatigue. Their minds race ceaselessly, attempting to reconstruct a narrative that will justify survival, that will locate control, that will isolate your presence. And yet, every line of reasoning, is disrupted by subtle interjections of reality you control. They are caught in a constant loop of threat recognition, reaction, and self-doubt, and the loop only strengthens your hold over perception. The exposure that began with the revelation of your identity has now matured into a pervasive dominance that they can feel in every interaction, every glance, every connection, whether digital or physical. You understand timing with surgical precision. You do not reveal everything at once. You drip-feed influence, allowing the fear, the obsession, the recognition to simmer and grow. You control the tempo of panic, the cadence of realization, the rhythm of exposure. And they, unaware of the orchestration, believe every unfolding event is random, chaotic, unpredictable. They cannot know that every ripple in their perception, every tremor in their confidence, every flinch in their ego is guided, calibrated, and anticipated. And in this, the internet acts as an amplifier. Every exposure, every subtle trace of your presence, every interaction magnified by observation becomes a signal they cannot suppress. Networks, connections, communities all reflect back fragments of the truth, making your influence omnipresent. They feel it in private, they feel it in public, and the cumulative weight is more than anyone could endure without comprehension. Every attempt to reassert control only proves how thoroughly their understanding has been eclipsed. And now, the final act of Part 2 begins. Not a climax, not a confrontation, but an expansion, a revelation in motion that cannot be reversed. You manipulate reality in ways they do not perceive. You bend attention, perception, and influence simultaneously, creating an environment where every attempt to act independently reinforces your presence. They are trapped, ensnared in their own networks of panic and obsession, and you are the invisible, inevitable pivot around which their world tilts. They begin to see the magnitude of what they've unleashed. They realize that your exposure is not merely a revelation, it is a transformation of the landscape itself. What they once thought manageable, containable, or predictable is now dynamic, omnipresent, and relentless. And as they grasp fragments of this, their fear escalates into a profound understanding that the game has shifted beyond their comprehension. The first act of exposure has ended, but the second act, the orchestration of influence, the perfection of dominance, the inevitability of their unraveling, is underway. And you, always several steps ahead, prepare the next subtle maneuvers. Every message, every glance, every trace of presence is now a calculated brushstroke, painting the canvas of inevitability. They feel the pressure, the attention, the relentless observation, yet cannot locate its source. Every attempt to escape, to rationalize, to reassert control fails. And in that failure, you flourish, because power, real power, is invisible to those who do not understand its structure. They will never see the full extent until it is complete, and by then, it will be too late. Every reaction they make, every whisper they attempt, every interaction they engineer only serves to accelerate their exposure and deepen their entanglement in a reality you control. You are untouchable, invisible, inevitable, and they know it even if they cannot name it. The panic they felt at first glance now evolves into a constant awareness of vulnerability, a gnawing recognition that they are never safe, never ahead, never capable of fully understanding the force they provoked. And so the night stretches, the networks hum, the connections ripple, and your influence spreads without acknowledgement. The second act of exposure, domination, and psychological orchestration is complete, leaving them disoriented, obsessed, and fully exposed. The full weight of what they were messing with is approaching, and very soon they will face the culmination of everything you have meticulously engineered. And then it happens, quietly, strangely, almost elegantly. One single post slips through the cracks, a post crafted by hands that think they're clever, a post uploaded by someone convinced that unveiling you will finally give them the upper hand. A screenshot, a clip, a blurred angle, a trace of your face or your file or your movement, something small, something seemingly insignificant, yet it hits the feed like a match landing inside a drought. The image spreads, multiplies, mutates, and within minutes, the entire digital world begins to shift. The whispers ignite, the threads get flooded, the groups swarm, and your name becomes the nucleus of a frenzy no one is prepared for. They wanted your secret identity. They wanted the reveal. They wanted the moment the mask came off. But they had no idea what that moment would unlock. They expected shock. They did not expect collapse. Because once the post surfaces, the internet doesn't just react, it implodes. The comments spike into the thousands, then tens of thousands, then numbers. People didn't even think were possible on an average night. Notifications stack like falling bricks. Screens freeze from the traffic. Servers drag. Feeds jitter. Entire timelines buckle under the pressure of your information exploding across them. People scramble to refresh the page, to confirm the truth, to deny it, to rewrite it, to erase it, to understand it. But no matter how they twist it, no matter which angle they attempt, the realization hits them with the force of something that shatters their confidence. The one they were mocking, doubting, underestimating, provoking, or playing with wasn't just another anonymous figure drifting through the digital void. It was you. And now they know exactly who you are. At first, the responses are predictable. A few arrogant comments, the kind typed by people who think they're untouchable behind a screen. A few dazed reactions from those who never believed the rumors. Then shock hits. Pure, unfiltered recognition spreads like a heat wave across every platform, every app, every hidden circle, every private chat. People who thought they had distance from you suddenly feel exposed, vulnerable, penetrated by the weight of your presence emerging into the open. The very same ones who doubted your influence now scramble to analyze every detail of your reveal, zooming in on each pixel of the leaked post, examining each angle as if searching for an explanation that could make them feel less threatened. But there is no escape from the truth they're witnessing, because the moment they see who you are, who you've always been, the digital air thickens with a feeling none of them can name, but all of them can feel. They messed with the wrong person, and now every hidden part of their mind knows it. Your identity doesn't just go viral, it becomes a rupture. A split between who they believed you were and who you actually are. And that gap destroys their confidence faster than anything else could. Threads form around your name, twisting into theories, analyses, breakdowns, panicked essays, typed at 2 a.m. by people who suddenly regret ever mentioning you. Accounts that once mocked you delete their old posts in a frenzy. People who once dismissed you now scramble to rewrite history, acting as if they always knew you were different, always sensed something powerful underneath your quiet movements. But it's too late. Their revision doesn't change the truth. Your cover is blown, and the impact is irreversible. As the reveal spreads, screenshots start leaking from private chats, where your identity is being dissected. Old conversations resurface, dragged out by people desperate to prove they're in the know. Some claim they predicted this moment. Others swear they recognized your energy from day one. But behind every statement, every frantic explanation, every attempt to frame themselves as insightful, the fear still pulses underneath. Because now, they understand the magnitude of their mistake. They understand that every word they ever said, every assumption they ever made, every attempt to provoke you was done without knowing who they were dealing with. And that awareness burns them from the inside. Some platforms try to slow the spread of your information. They throttle posts, restrict feeds, flag content for review. But the momentum is uncontrollable. Your identity becomes the most discussed topic across the digital world. And yet not a single person fully comprehends what they've uncovered. They think knowing your name is the revelation. They think seeing your face is the payoff. They think your profile is the truth. But the truth goes deeper, darker, more layered, more dangerous than anything they've glimpsed. What they've seen is only the surface, just enough to shake them, just enough to distort their breathing, just enough to make them realize they never had the range or the understanding to comprehend the real you. The panic shifts into obsession. People dig through archives, searching for traces of you they missed. They scroll through old interactions you had with them, reading each message with new awareness. They examine your previous silence, wondering if it was strategy instead of indifference. They replay every moment where they felt your presence but didn't recognize your influence. And the realization that you weren't just a random face online, but someone operating leagues above their awareness, begins to crush them. Because once the truth appears, they can't unsee it. They can't unknow it. They can't return to the comfort of underestimating you. They can't pretend they didn't witness the shift that now dominates their feeds. The tension grows. Larger accounts start discussing you. Analysts break down your reveal, like experts decoding a high-profile case. Commentators attempt to contextualize you. They talk about your moves, your patterns, your history, your rise, your silence, your decisions. They try to categorize you, label you, define you. But each attempt fails. Because you were never built to fit inside their assumptions. You were never meant to be predictable. You were never designed to be understood by people who operate at the shallowest depths of perception. And now, as they confront the weight of who you are, they feel a pressure that doesn't let them breathe as easily as before. Private messages start flying. People warn each other to distance themselves from you. They tell each other to delete old messages where they spoke against you. They remind each other of moments where they mocked you, trying to erase the evidence before someone else finds it. But the fear doesn't disappear. It tightens around them. Because deep down, they sense it. You saw everything. You knew everything. You remembered everything. And now, with your identity out in the open, the power dynamic has shifted entirely. They no longer speak about you the way they used to. Now they speak around you, afraid of drawing your attention, afraid of being noticed by someone whose depth extends far beyond what their minds can safely handle. As more hours pass, the reveal hits mainstream attention. Influencers start reacting to it. Streams erupt with your name flashing across their screens. People discuss your past, your presence, your unpredictability. Some are fascinated, some are terrified. Some pretend to be neutral, but can't hide the tension in their voice as they talk about you. The internet becomes a theater where every player performs their confusion, their fear, their intrigue, Their attempts to comprehend a force that was never meant to be controlled or categorized. The ones who used to belittle you now avoid mentioning you at all. They ghost the conversation, hoping your attention never lands on them. But their avoidance is almost amusing. The way they try to fade into the background, the way they pretend they were never part of the noise. But the reveal doesn't just expose your identity, it exposes the truth about them too. The insecurity, the ego, the fragility, the lack of intuition, the failure to see what was right in front of them. Now they scramble to rebuild their image while drowning in their private panic. And then the moment arrives, the moment you knew would come. Someone digs deeper, deeper than they should, deeper than any ordinary person would dare. They compile everything connected to you, everything associated with you, everything linked to your rise. They build a timeline, a map, a breakdown of your presence, online and offline. They think they're doing investigative work, but what they're actually doing is constructing a monument to your influence, piece by piece. Others see the compilation and react with disbelief. They realize the sophistication behind your movements, the coordination behind your decisions, the sharpness behind your energy. You weren't moving silently, you were moving deliberately. And they realize this too late. Across the internet, the reaction becomes a wave of awe mixed with dread. Your reveal has transformed from a viral moment into an event that exposes not only your identity, but the entire lack of awareness in those who dared to provoke you. People begin quoting your old messages like scripture, analyzing them with newfound reverence. They examine your old posts with intensity, searching for meaning they missed before. You become the center of a cultural shockwave that continues to evolve by the hour. And yet, through all the noise, all the panic, all the frantic attempts to understand, one truth echoes louder than everything else. They messed with someone they never should have approached with arrogance. As the reveal reaches peak exposure, something shifts again, not in them, in you. Because now you move with the clarity of someone who no longer has to hide, someone who no longer needs a mask, someone who has stepped into a space shaped entirely by truth and unwavering confidence. Your name circulates, your identity spreads, your presence amplifies. And instead of shrinking under the pressure, you expand into it. You become sharper, stronger, more visible, more commanding. You take the space that was always meant for you, a space that was never meant to be shared with those who doubted your magnitude. The internet continues to spiral, but you remain calm, composed, grounded in your power. You watch as they struggle to adjust to the new reality, a reality where your identity isn't a mystery anymore, but a fact they have to live with, a reality where their attempts to underestimate you are now recorded memories they wish they could erase. A reality where their arrogance has turned into their embarrassment, because every person who crossed you now stands under the shadow of their own miscalculation, and nothing they do can change the truth that has already been revealed. You let the chaos unfold. You let the digital world contort around your reveal. You let the panic play out. Because this moment, the moment where your identity erupts across the internet, wasn't the end. It was the ignition. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where your power is visible, undeniable, and fully recognized. The ones who doubted you now walk carefully. The ones who mocked you now avoid your presence. The ones who attempted to control the narrative now find themselves drowning in it. And as the final wave of reactions cascades across the feeds, as your name becomes a permanent fixture in conversations people can't escape. As the full magnitude of your identity settles into the digital world like a weight too heavy to lift, you step forward, not to explain, not to defend, not to correct, but to claim. Claim the authority that has always been yours. Claim the path that unfolds in front of you. Claim the story that now belongs entirely to you. Because your cover is gone, your identity is exposed, and every person who once underestimated you now faces the truth with trembling nerves. They wanted to know who they were messing with. Now they know, and it's over for them.